welcome back to BBN After Dark. We have the second full weekend of games here. Robbie Floyd joined by Brandon Birnstill. And Bernie, want to start a 4-0 perfect weekend for 14U Birnstill, picking up the tournament championship. Bernie, this is a team that I feel like really wound into form this weekend. Really not a lot to complain about. You face a team that beat you last year, Bernie. You don't have all of your guys, and you're able to beat them handily twice this weekend, including in the championship game, a big-time weekend. Bernie, give me your overall thoughts. I'm going to ask you about some players. What were your overall thoughts for the 14 Birnstill weekend?
Yeah, it was nice to see some guys step up here. I said after the first weekend, I told my guys that we were just as good a team as last fall, even with some guys out, that we just had to believe it. And I think that, that team we beat on Saturday and Sunday might not be our best team we beat this year. It definitely won't be. But it might be one of our biggest wins in terms of how much it got everyone to believe in, the guys we had for the weekend.
Bernie, I want to start with the pitching side of things. 24 strikeouts to 6 walks. That is a dominant ratio. That's 4-1. Big time. 5 different guys pitched, Bernie. They all were very, very good. Starting with the starters, Owen Lewis and Hunter Finley, I believe, started on Saturday, Bernie. Is that right?
Saturday was Fish and
Rowan. Hunter Finley and Rowan Damschroeder started on Saturday. Between the two of them, Bernie, 10 Ks, 3 walks, both very, very good. Hunter Finley started against that good team we were talking about, Bernie, and really shut them down, at least for the first part of the game, before Kenny Douglas came and closed it. I want to start with your Saturday pitchers, Bernie. Give me your thoughts on Hunter Finley, Rowan Damschroeder. If they're pitching well, what does that mean to the pitching staff?
Yeah, Fish has been a staple of that rotation. I said, one of the first shows we did, I think the one before the season started, that, it didn't matter who I put Fish up there against anymore, right? Even against good teams, this guy's going to shut him down. He just continues to prove that week in and week out. And, Rowan, that's a whole new thing out of the pitching staff, man. This guy, struggled at times last year, especially when he to throw strikes. And this guy was throwing a lot of strikes, fastballs with curveballs. And he went up there and straight up dominated the team he played, or he faced on Saturday.
Then on Sunday, Owen Lewis pitched his first game, and then Rudy Montenegro Langley on the mound for the championship. Between the two of them, 10 strikeouts, 3 walks, both very, very good. Bernie, we've known Owen as a big-time ace. Maybe wasn't quite his sharpest in week 1, but certainly came out and looked super dominant this week. And then, Bernie, you mentioned Rowan being kind of the new element to the pitching staff. If Rudy can give you these type of outings and these type of games, that gives you a whole new weapon as well. Give me your thoughts on Owen Lewis and Rudy Montenegro Langley, and give some love to Kenny Douglas, who looked very, very sharp in relief this weekend.
Yeah, Owen Lewis did what Owen Lewis was going to do. He's looked good really both weekends he's been out there. Rudy, again, man, a whole new aspect of this pitching staff. And it's like, if Rudy is on, he is a Sunday ace. That's how hard he throws. That's how nasty he is. If he's going to be in the zone, he is going to be a Sunday guy. And then Kenny Douglas as well, same exact thing, kind of like Rudy. This guy's, nasty. I think this guy, if he is on, has the best curveball on the team. He throws it extremely hard. And he showed what he could be, this weekend out of the bullpen. But, all 5 of those guys stepped up. Last year, I think there's real argument to be said that, Vogt and Harrison were the 1 and 2 of the rotation. Both those guys aren't there. Those 5 guys stepped up. And even with that, I still didn't touch Connor Kennedy or Applehahn this weekend, who were big, massive parts of the first weekend we played. There's a million different arms at this 14U age right now.
Bernie, offensively, Rudy did his thing, his 3rd homer of the season already, an OPS over 2,000 this weekend. Kenny Douglas was a monster, an OPS over 1,500. But I want to talk about 2 guys who struggled a bit in the first weekend, bounced back with a vengeance this weekend. That's Owen Lewis, an OPS over 1,600, and J.R. Welty, who had an OPS of 1,350. These 2 guys, again, you can't take too much from the first weekend, but both didn't quite look like themselves in the first weekend. Both coming out, Bernie, monsters this weekend. What did that mean to the offense here in the second full weekend of games?
Yeah, the massive hole in the lineup, the first weekend was like the 4 through 6, and, unfortunately that's, Owen Lewis batting 4, J.R. Welty batting 5 or 6. So those guys flipping the gear, man, makes the whole lineup flow. And, Owen Lewis has been a 450, 4 to 450 hitter, since I took over at 11U. So, you knew it was a matter of time with him that he was going to hit for the high average, but, he flashed some power this weekend. We were playing on a legit 305, 310 to right field this weekend, and he hit the ball off the fence in the air. And J.R. Welty did a similar thing to left field where he hit an absolute bomb that I think one-hopped the fence. So great signs for both of them.
And Bernie, I want to talk about another guy who has been arguably, at least statistically, your third best hitter so far, and that's been Connor Kennedy. I feel like last year he was used mostly as a big-time pitcher, as a defensive player, but this year it seems like the bat has really come around. What's been the difference for Connor Kennedy that's helped him offensively so far this year?
Yeah, I think first of all, Connor believes that he's a good hitter now. I think after that first weekend where he took some really good swings, got some really nice hits, that he started believing in himself a little bit. I thought last year Connor took really good at bats, but he was a little too passive, get himself into these 2-2, 3-2, taking these long at bat counts where he wasn't really swinging the bat too much until he got 2 strikes. This guy's aggressive from the start, and the quality of his at bats. If you want to teach an approach at the plate of what to swing at, what not to swing at, how aggressive to be, what not to be aggressive at. The perfect example has been Connor Kennedy so far, and he's starting to make contact now.
Yeah, very, very impressive stuff for the 4-2 Birnstill team. This is a team I think is going to have a great year. And then once they get some of those horses back, the Alex Vos, the Harrison Blaibaums, even the Braden Youngs, I think you can see this team really try to charge for some big, big numbers in the win column. I want to talk about another team, Bernie, 11U Nickerson, a 5-0 championship winning weekend. This is a team that came out, had some question marks coming into the season, but here in week 2, they absolutely dominated through the weekend. 5-0, won all 3 games on Sunday by 8 runs or more. I mean, this is a team, Bernie, that when they're on, they're one of the best teams in the entire organization, and they were on this weekend. 2 guys, Bernie, who were came out the blocks a little slow in weekend 1, that were back to dominating here in weekend 2, Easton Taylor and Peter Rojek. Bernie, we've talked about Blake and Peter specifically, but Easton as well. If this team wants to do well, they need those 3 players to do well. Bernie, Easton, and Peter were monsters this weekend. Give me your thoughts on the 11U Nickerson offense.
Yeah, it's great to see Peter back, but you knew it was going to come with Peter at some point. This guy's just a superstar for that team. Easton, I think when we've talked about Easton being quote-unquote on, it's been a lot of pitching and a lot of defense, being one of the best defenders and being one of the best pitchers on that team. I don't know if he's necessarily been known as a really good hitter, so I think that's kind of a new thing for Nickerson to where, again, that just adds on to the lineup, how deep you can make that lineup, because they have the studs. It's just a matter of how deep you can make that lineup, and Easton will be a massive part of that.
Bernie, speaking of trying to add depth to the lineup, 2 guys who were second-team players for the majority of last year get called up to the Nickerson team after a bit of a rough first weekend, and they both hit .444 and .500 respectively. That's Jack Anderson and Jack Akins. These are 2 guys, Bernie, that I know have been prospects since they joined the Bears, getting a chance with the top team and making the most of it so far, Bernie. I know Damien has talked about, if you want to play on my team, you got to hit. And the 2 Jacks, Bernie, have really done a nice job of that here in the second weekend. Give me your thoughts on Jack Anderson and Jack Akins, both really nice offensive weekends.
Yeah, I don't know what the future holds in regards like this weekend or what Damien's going to do. But if you talk to Damien after that first weekend, his whole complaint was about his offense, man. He's like, we didn't hit. Outside of, 1, maybe 2 guys, there was no offense to be found. But it looks really good for those 2 guys that they're on the team this weekend, and they were a part of that big offensive explosion. They were a part of Nickerson getting back to hitting the ball really well. So I don't know what the future's going to hold for Damien or what decisions he's going to make. But those 2 guys, I think could easily deserve another shot here.
Bernie, the starting pitching this weekend, 20 strikeouts, just 4 walks. Really, really impressive stuff. Damien said this he thinks is going to be the strength of his team this year. That's the pitching. Camden Kinsey, Connor Wisely got to start. He's another guy that's been a second-team player, got called up to the top team, had a nice outing. Jackson Frazier and Christian Closter, all very, very good on the mound. Give me your thoughts on the Nickerson pitching staff this week in Bernie. Camden Kinsey, Connor Wisely, Jackson Frazier, and Christian Closter, 20 Ks to 4 walks.
Yeah, great for these guys. And, I was talking to Damien at the day we're recording this. I was talking to him before it, and he was talking about how, he only had Easton for a couple pitches. He didn't use 2 or 3 of his arms to the max this weekend. He really, wanted to give other guys chances this weekend on the mound. And again, that just adds to the depth of this team because, even though the Superstars didn't throw, man, they got through 5 games and, still, went 5-0.
Yeah, very, very impressive stuff. I think this team, sky's the limit for that Nickerson roster. Let's move on and talk about 13U Floyd. Didn't quite get it done in the championship game, but a second-place weekend for 13U Floyd. They've got a 6-3 record to start the season. Not too shabby at all. Bernie, I want to talk about 2 guys. I feel like when we talk about kind of the face of the offense for this team, a lot of times you're talking about Owen Haynes. A lot of times you're talking about Cooper Woolen. A lot of times you're talking about Brady Felton. 2 guys who were absolute monsters at the plate this weekend, Bernie. Hamilton Case, who hit 2 home runs over the fence, and Ben Bonchek. They led the team in OPS this weekend. Bernie, you know you're going to have Brady. You know you're going to have Owen Haynes. You know you're going to have Cooper. What's it mean for this offense if Ben Bonchek and Hamilton Case are supplying home run power?
Yeah, I don't know if you could say you expected home run power to Hamilton Case, but at least to me, I don't know about the general public, but I always think Hamilton's one of the best hitters on that team. This guy is a stud on every single side of the ball. He is a stud of that team. But Ben Bonchek, man, look, great defensive shortstop, or where defense really wherever he's playing. But I'd be lying if I even said that I would expect a home run, just from looking at him. But that's great. That's great for Ben, man. Amazing to see him get his first home run, and hopefully that gives him the confidence to become one of the the big offensive bats in that squad.
Yeah, if those two are going, Bernie, this lineup gets super, super deep. Bernie, continue the theme here. I mentioned 11 Nickerson, great strikeout to walk ratio, great pitching on the mound. 4-2 Birnstill, great strikeout to walk ratio, great pitching on the mound. 13 Floyd as well, 24 strikeouts to 8 walks, dominant on the mound. Bernie, a couple guys I want to ask you about. I believe the Saturday arms were Wheaton Hainline and Cooper Woolen. Wheaton Hainline, again, we always have known him as a strike thrower, but starting to put up the strikeouts so far this year, Bernie. Whedon already with 10 Ks in his first 8 innings pitched. If Whedon's getting a bunch of strikeouts, Bernie, where could he finish in the Cy Young conversation? What do you think about Wheaton Hainline's start to the season on the pitching side?
Yeah, obviously, the more strikeouts you get, the higher you're going to be in that Cy Young voting, if he can continue to keep his ERA down. But Whedon's dangerous, man, just because there's not, like we've said a million times, there's not many 32 guys they can put a fastball exactly where they want, where they can put a changeup exactly where they want, where they can throw a curveball even in the zone, much less where they want to. So if he can do those, those things, man, the velo will come, as he gets older, as he lifts, as he gets bigger. But the accuracy right now will get him in that Cy Young conversation.
And then Bernie on Sunday, Owen Haynes through the first game, a 7K, 0-walk outing. And then Carson Griffith through the semifinal, 6 Ks, 1 walk for him. Bernie, I think these are kind of your big 2 Sunday guys. These are guys that need to go out and win games on their own, and they certainly did it this weekend, Bernie. Give me your thoughts on Owen Haynes and Carson Griffith putting up great outings here on Sunday.
Yeah, Owen Haynes done it long enough now where I think you can kind of chalk him up to that kind of outing every weekend. Whatever their run's gonna be is what they're gonna be. But the 0 walks, 6, 7, 8 Ks, the outing type thing. But Griffith again, another guy I feel like didn't pitch much last year. I said it on the first show. This guy, I watched him pitch a little bit last year for the second team sometimes, or maybe Floyd late in the season, kind of in mop up scenarios. And this guy was electric, and I think that he's proved this year that he is a Sunday guy. I think there is an argument to be made that he is the nastiest pitcher on that team. Combination of velo and stuff. That if he's in the zone, he is probably the best pitcher on that team.
Yeah, very, very impressive stuff for 13U Floyd. Didn't quite get the championship this weekend, but there will be a lot of championships over the course of the season for that team. Let's move on, Bernie. I did want to talk about a little about 12U Floyd. The wins haven't started to come yet for this team, but we're starting to see some really encouraging signs. Starting with the pitching staff, Bernie. I mentioned it. The pitching for the varsity teams this weekend was absolutely phenomenal. 12U Floyd was no exception. 21 strikeouts to 7 walks. Bernie, when you're looking at this pitching staff, obviously you look at the ace and Camden Kraft. This guy dominant again on the season. He's got 13 Ks to just 5 walks, Bernie. If this is a guy who can really be the ace of that team. And honestly, Bernie, this is what I told the boys after the weekend. It feels like a lot of times these good teams, especially in the Bears, you start to get better, but what you don't have yet is the pitching. 12U Floyd's kind of doing it backwards, where the pitching's already figured out. It's the rest of it that starts to come around. How important is it, Bernie, that 12U Floyd already kind of has a very deep pitching staff, and especially an ace like Camden Kraft? Give me your thoughts on the 12U Floyd pitching.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. Great to have. Like you said, that usually comes last with kind of Bears teams, but I don't think there is a massive worry around the Bears. These guys are going to hit at some point. There's a lot of really good hitters on this team. Benny Wayner, Brooks, Biddle, Camden Kraft. Really the top 5 or 6 guys in the lineup all are really good hitters. There's even some more younger prospects I think that are new to the Bears that I like a lot. But if your pitch staff's gonna if the pitch staff's already figured out, this hitting's gonna be figured out by May and June, to where this team's gonna start flying.
Saturday starters, Bernie, Leo Papin and Benny Wanner, 8 Ks to 2 walks between the two of them. We talk about Camden Kraft kind of being that ace. I think Benny Wanner's kind of that reliable. You can send him out every weekend. You know what you're going to get. And then Leo Papin's kind of the Saturday ace. He's the guy who I like to send out against a tougher team, and he can win a game himself on the mound. Give me your thoughts on the Saturday starters, Bernie, Leo Papin and Benny Wanner.
Yeah, I didn't get to see a ton of Benny Wanner start this weekend, but just from knowing Benny, man, seeing this guy pitch in precision a lot. This guy's gonna give you a chance every time he takes the mound. And Leo, I dig it out to watch. A decent amount of Leo start this week. I was kind of back and forth between a couple of games, but I was watching Leo. And he went up there against a good team, man, and he pitched really well through the first, 3 innings of his outing. Kind of started to lose it at the end a little bit, started getting hit around a little bit, but I think he flashed, the first couple of innings what he could be against a really good team, and that is a shutdown pitcher.
And then out of the bullpen, I thought got really good outings from Clay Leday out of the bullpen. He's off to it. Let me actually pull up his season stats. Yeah, Clay Leday, 5 Ks, just 1 walk to start this season on the mound. And then Camden Kramer was very effective as well. 4 Ks to 1 walk for him. Looking at the offense, Bernie, obviously this team hasn't got it quite going as a team offensively, but I did want to mention a couple guys, starting with Camden Kraft. This is a guy who I think we all knew what he could do at the plate last year. A lot of singles, a lot of times on base, but really starting to develop as an all-around hitter this year. And then another guy, Bernie, I know you like a lot, Braden DeRuse, had a monster double way over the outfielders' heads on Sunday. Was probably second furthest hit ball of the weekend for the team. These are 2 guys, Bernie, Camden Kraft and Braden DeRuse. If we can get really consistent offense from them, the other superstars will catch up to it at some point. Give me your thoughts on Kraft and DeRuse as offensive players.
Yeah, I think Kraft was expected to be a big part of the offense this year. We kind of, he didn't really show that big jump last year, but we all expected it to happen. But with DeRuse, man, look, on a team that, you could say is struggling offensively, that's the way for more playing time, man. And I hope for Braden that he continues to hit because, if he can be a catalyst of his offense, he's going to get a ton of more playing time. And I really like Braden's a great kid. He's an athlete. And, maybe he gets a shot in the top 5 or 6 of the lineup because, they're trying to get that offense jump-started.
And then, Bird, to end the show, I know we don't usually talk about youth prep, but I do want to give Tenyu Bell a quick shout-out. A 3-0 Sunday came through and won their bracket. Very, very impressive stuff. Bernie, Louis Marquardt, Oscar Marquardt, Hudson Pollock, all monster weekends. I didn't get a chance to catch these guys live, Bernie. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of the championship game. But this team, Jackson Bell doing a great job with them, really starting to come around. Any thoughts on Tenyu Bell from a nice weekend here in the second weekend?
Yeah, I got to catch a lot of this team's championship game. The first thing, this is a really fun team to be around. A lot of really good kids on this team. And I thought in the time I was there, this team pitched really well. This team played good defense. But this team really didn't hit as well as I was expecting, as well as maybe they did the first weekend. And they were still able to come out with a championship, I know that this team got a lot of big pitching performances this weekend. And, this team does a lot of the little things right. This team does a lot of pickoffs. JB's been very good at teaching them that. This team can execute a rundown better than any Tenyu team you've seen. But, maybe the last step of this team is, behind Louis Marquardt, behind Burke in the 2-hole, behind Pollock in the 3, who's the next guy to step up in the lineup. This team also has a couple younger prospects, newer players to the Bears that I liked as well that first weekend.
Very, very good weekend here for the Bears. Very, very impressive stuff from Tenyu Bell. Hopefully we can keep playing this weekend. I know some rain in the forecast, but hopefully we can get out there. I know, Bernie, you're pretty confident we're going to play Sunday at least, right? So hopefully we can get out there, get some baseball, and we will be right back for another BBN After Dark next week. We'll talk to y'all then.